Welcome to Liz McMullen Show, episode 81. My guest this evening is Jennifer L. Jordan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks.
So, I was it's so funny because it's a small world, but I guess I was going through a lesbian fiction reading spree, and there's this bookstore that's no longer open, sadly, because of the dip in the economy in 2008. But before then, I got all my books there, and I got your first book there, and I went through all of them. I bought all of them there, and then I got an email from your publisher last year asking if I would interview you, and I was like, oh my God, I know who she is.
That's so sweet. What was the bookstore, by the way?
Oscar Wilde Bookstore on Christopher Street in New York City.
Oh, yes. I didn't really, yeah.
Yeah, they, the book that we're going to talk about is Killed in Escrow. I was going to say Murdered in Escrow. You preface it that you had written the book in 2004, and that was before all the inappropriate real estate and loaning practices brought down our economy. But yeah, that's one of the sign of the times. The Oscar Wilde was the last truly bookstore, because like there are gift stores that have books, but that was the last one. Before that, there was also A Different Light, which was in Chelsea, but that closed as well. Total bummer. But I used to go into the shop, and I'd sit on the floor in front of the lesbian fiction section, and I would pluck things down and read the first page or look at the back cover and pick them up, and I ended up buying all of your books because I was very excited.
Oh, that's a nice compliment. As an aside, I self-published that first one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first two, A Safe Place to Sleep and Existing Solutions. And when I did that, the first one came out in 1992, and there were 200 gay and lesbian bookstores then, because I had a list of them, and I either sent them free copies and or called all of them in an attempt to get the book out there. So to me, it's what you're describing is the greatest loss, that's occurred in publishing, period, but specifically gay and lesbian publishing.
Yeah, it's hard. And, I worked for, just out of college, which I graduated in 98, I worked for this New Age bookstore called Beyond Words, which is in Northampton, Massachusetts, and has also closed. When I started working there, that was when stores like Barnes and Noble and whatnot were popping up, and they were having those horribly, deeply discounted books, especially like the new releases. And, it was very difficult for us to keep up because we couldn't discount that way, but we did have more personal service. And then Amazon showed up.
Yeah.
And they would, instead of having to wait a few days or a week for a book from us, ordering them, they could have it the next day or close to that. And that killed it. The brick and mortar stores, and right now, even Barnes and Noble is closing down because of the ebook revolution.
Right.
But yeah, I really enjoyed your books, and like, I remember going through them, and actually, now I remember what I was thinking. I'm like, normally I look at the copyright page, and I'm like, but all the copyright pages are the same year. Which one is first?
Yeah, no, they got, so I don't know if you want to hear this long and winding story, but I self-published A Safe Place to Sleep and Existing Solutions. And then for the third one, which was Commitment to Die, I found a very small lesbian publisher who only published 2 or 3 books total. And then she basically sold she sold that book plus the rights to the series to Spinsters. Mm-hmm. And so then Spinsters took over from there, and they re-released the first 2. I don't think they really released the third one. They just sold what stock they had. So that's why they may look like they all came out in the same year, but that's the order of things.
Yeah, and I know that Bella developed a lot as one of the few online distributors, and I know that they swallowed up a lot of, not in a bad way, but a lot of the feminist presses sold their stock or sold the rights to Bella.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me in the series.
Yeah,
and at the time, I was actually the first to kind of come over and become part of Spinsters, which is a division, in essence, of Bella.
mm-hmm.
And so then I became a Spinsters author, and they brought out 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
So they right now brought out all of the what I call the Kristen Ash series, Kristen being the main character.
So I noticed in your new book, though it had been written in 2004, that we have another successful professional who's decided to be a PI, and that was Kristen Ash's thing. And what I find interesting, but extremely irrelevant, is that, sometimes those who become successful become extremely bored with the day-to-day of their jobs and are hungering for something more interesting. And sometimes that more interesting becomes a very dangerous more interesting. But why do you think that you kind of picked that up as, your main characters?
Why each of them are in that same position, you're saying?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I hadn't even, other than that it completely mirrors my own life, I hadn't thought, and I think there's somewhat of a difference between them, which is Kristen I wrote when I was younger. She is younger. Those mysteries were more about why. They weren't traditional mysteries. I was way more interested in why people did what they did to each other, and the nuances of good and evil, and no one's completely good and no one's completely evil, and I think she does it more kind of as a hobby. And where Killed in Escrow came was around that time, and this also relates to the big gap in publishing, is I really wanted to break into mainstream. And so I conceived of this idea of a cozy mystery, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of these series out there where the person owns a bed and breakfast, or is a professional chef, or there's a knitting circle, or and I've always been attracted to real estate, and so I thought this thing will just sell like mad. And I wanted, the reason I wanted to leave lesbian publishing and break into mainstream, bluntly, is I wanted to make a living at it. And so I wrote the book, Killed in Escrow, and I told myself, I gave myself 5 years to succeed at this. And I even threw in a 6th year, because 1 year I got really distracted editing a book and buying and selling my own real estate. And so, I felt like I've run a small business since I was 21, and I've taught 2,000 or 3,000 people how to run their own small businesses. So I knew that if I couldn't make it by the end of 5 years, that was plenty of time to give it a shot. And so I wrote the book, and then went looking for a New York agent that specialized in women's mysteries. And I came so close that to this day I could just practically cry talking about it. But in the end, I didn't get a contract. And so I just sat then. It sat from... I was done with it in 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. And it just sat. I, in 2008, went to a GCLS conference, and I ran into Charlene Brown, who runs Clover Valley Press, just in the course of socializing. And we kind of ended up hanging out together quite a bit for the weekend. And a year and a half ago, somewhere in there, I had gone to the conference with a friend of mine, Joyce, and Joyce stayed in touch with Charlene. I didn't stay in touch with Charlene, and Joyce, called me up in August, and she's like, "Oh, Charlene's coming into town," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And so she had a barbecue, and I came over, and I told her, basically in the course of this barbecue, I told her I not only had Killed in Escrow, Liz, I actually, because I got so close with the New York literary agent that she literally got on the phone and said, "I love your writing, but there's too much real estate in this book," which is kind of ironic. But and she told me, she said, "I never say this to anyone, but if you write something else, I want to read it." And so I thought, well, I want the top agent. Why should I settle for number 2 or number 3? So I immediately stopped Killed in Escrow, wrote a second one, and wrote a third one. And when I sent her the second one, she essentially, which took me a full year to write, by the way, she basically said, I still can't pick it up. And so when I bumped into Charlene in this fateful August barbecue, it was really weird. I had this horoscope. I always read my horoscope, but I don't like to listen to it too much, but it said something in there about you've got to be a little aggressive. And I'm like, okay. But I came to this, and her press only publishes 1 or 2 books a year, and they're all from the Northlands. They're either of that genre, the people write about that area, or they live there. And so I'm in Colorado. My characters are in Colorado. I didn't think I had a chance. But at that barbecue, I just thought, I'm going to speak up. And I was like, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but I have these 3 books. They're already written. I just have to go back and edit them and make them lesbian because my main character for mainstream was in the genre of Sue Grafton's and Marcia Mueller's and Sarah Paretsky's, where they're straight, but they don't really do much. I mean, the boyfriend comes and goes, disappears, doesn't appear for another 150 pages. So I said, I have to rewrite him, to make the main character lesbian, but would you be interested? And so that explains the gap, and that's how I came to be publishing at least 3. I mean, we'll get at least 3 here because I've written 3. So I don't. That's kind of a circuitous answer to your question. Why are they all these burnt out professionals? But and I've also had a love-hate. In case you can't tell from reading Killed in Escrow, I've always had this kind of love-hate relationship with realtors. I've done a bunch of real estate transactions. I've thought of getting my own license. I halfway admire them on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm like, why did you just make $9,000 for 4 hours worth of work? And then somewhat of a disdain for all these other people, the mortgage brokers and the appraisers and the title people, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely placed that real estate for a very specific reason, which was that was the whole point of the series.
Well, you had a humdinger of a start where, where you realize that she's giving this very frank speech in front of teenagers for a career day thing. I was just like, I hate realtors. I know I am one, but
Right, and you're not giving anything away to readers. This occurs in the first page or 2. But yeah, basically, Lauren Veliket is the main character now. And the opening line is something like, I hate realtors. And then she just goes on and on and on about all the bad things about the whole profession. And a page into it then stops. And, the teacher who has invited her for career day to speak to these high school students doesn't quite know what to make of this rant.
It was awesome, and I loved that the other guy who was speaking on the same topic was so dull.
Right.
And then they find out that she's a PI, and they're all interested in that. And she's like, no. The teachers, we're talking about real estate. We're not talking about And I was like, uh-oh. But I dug it. I also dug. Let's see let me find your character before Sasha. And the reason why I wanted to bring up Sasha is that I'm in the process of writing a YA novel, and one of my characters is a complete and total punk rock girl, like, with the pale skin and the blue hair, which I kind of laughed at because she had blue hair. I was like, yeah, my Lilith has blue hair too, and wears like wicked corsets. And, one of her signature clothing items is the shoes that she wears. A lot of them have like crazy amount of buckles and zippers, and they're really tall and badass. And I was reading that character and I was like, that's so Lilith. That's so rad. Other than, Lilith's much more possessed and precocious than Sasha is a little bit of a, but that's not fun, kind of character. But I was like, oh my God, same thing, pale skin, lots of makeup, blue hair.
Yeah, they're like mirror. They would be friends in real life.
Oh yeah, they would shop together. Definitely shop together. Oh, I have as a reader, a bone to pick with you about one thing that happened in the Kristen Ash series. And I'll be vague about it because I don't want to give away some of the important plot points. But there was Destiny and Kristen end up getting embroiled in this investigation. Destiny wants to find her past, and I was miffed that when Kristen finally was able to, face a part of her past and she shared it with Destiny, and then Destiny went and told what was a complete stranger other than them being best friends when they were toddlers. And I was just like, oh, how dare you say something so fucking personal? I was so mad at Destiny. It's like, what a betrayal. How could you do that?
What a meanie. I actually, I have a confession to make, which is I have never reread those books. I edited them, and as you know from writing your own, when I go through the editing process, I've probably, by the time I'm done, I've read the thing at least 30 times, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've never read them again. So,
well, I mean,
to apologize on behalf of Destiny, but I actually can't even, I wasn't even aware of what you're talking about.
Well, like Destiny is this big, very public lesbian, very political, and Kristen Ash is not. And my feeling was, and I know that even if you don't remember, this is for the benefit of my listeners, there are some deep, dark secrets that people have. And when they share something, it's an incredible sign of trust. Mm-hmm. And to have it so flippantly shared with somebody else and have it pop up in conversation, oh my God. I had this instance in real life where I shared a bit of really confidential information, just explaining somebody's absence. And it was very, very private. And then the person I told about 3 or 4 hours later blurted it out, the reasoning behind, and then kind of said, oh, but it's confidential. I guess she was waiting for me to kind of back up the story and like lend my witness testimony, and I was horrified. I was horrified, not just because the secret had gotten out, but I was horrified that the person who spoke to me in confidence that this would get back to her. And I was like, oh my God, she's going to kill me.
Yeah. Those, as you know, I mean, book 1 and 2 almost exclusively, which is A Safe Place to Sleep and Existing Solutions, are all about secrets.
Yeah.
Essentially, so.
Well, and I see what you meant when you earlier spoke about how the Kristen Ash series is the why, because both of them are both, Kristen Ash and Lauren do take up being a PI, but it's different and it's very delicate with Kristen. I also thought that you had really interesting characters. One of the most interesting to me is Fran, who's a senior citizen who is total badass and is still, I mean, not only is she still trying new things like snowboarding for one. When she moved into an apartment that was a part of Destiny's home, she wanted to create basically a place for her to do snowboarding tricks, like the equivalent of a, you know, a ramp to do your skateboard stuff. And I was just like, no fucking way. And her wife at the time was like, this is not, you don't really see her very much. You just learn about her through things that Fran says and whatnot. But she's like, you know, you're supposed to grow old with me, and you're not growing old.
Right. That's what I think of that line a lot, especially as I get older, and I see how people are at different ages, but really different. Like 250-year-olds are really quite a bit different ages. And yeah, that Ruth line was something like Ruth is Fran's partner. She's complaining to Chris. Chris kind of gets involved in the middle of their fights, and she's complaining to Chris, well, we were supposed to grow old together. And Chris is like, well, what's the problem? You know, you are. And she's like, she's not growing old. She states that as a complaint, which I think is super funny.
And what's kind of comical is that in the same way that Fran is a little excessive in her continued youth, her wife is going in the complete opposite direction and playing up frailty and choosing to take up with someone who's frail, to the point where it's just comical. It's, it's not sincere. And it's like people, and you go like, women, my God.
Well, she follows that up, not to give away too big of a plot point, but she follows that up by, her crazy dating afterward. This is Fran later.
Fran is hilarious, but what's cool is I've met people, and I've also, there's this one person that I knew, and she was the only butch go-go dancer in the lesbian circuit. And she was still doing it in her late 30s and whatnot. And there were a lot, occasionally these grumblings about, why doesn't she just cast this down and do another job, at the age that she is, and, that kind of ageist thing. And it's the same thing with Fran. Fran still had it going on. And she, obviously she'd be attracted to much younger women because they share more interests than she does with Kristen.
Yeah. What's strange about her, too, is probably over the course of time, 4 or 5 people have come up to me and said they know her. Not literally, but they know someone like her. And I don't. I mean, she was completely fiction. But yeah. I think she must strike something in people.
She was a badass. So people kind of know who she is. She was a nun.
Yeah, an ex-nun, correct. By the time, Kristen meets her, she's now an ex-nun, correct.
Yeah, and she couldn't be Butcher.
Right.
She really couldn't be Butcher, sincerely. And, yeah, I dug her a lot. And just segueing to some comments about the series with Kristen, is that I didn't realize in retrospect in it, because I was reading the series again in anticipation of us meeting, I didn't realize how, really serious these books were. There are a lot of, emotional minefields, and instead of the sleuthing being, finding the murderer kind of thing, it was finding finding the reasons behind things, discovering secrets and uncovering them, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But it's a very unique approach to mystery.
Well, and I think the counterpart to that is Fran, is what we were talking about. And as part of my process, I do elaborate plotting. I used to lay it out in PageMaker, which what would be equivalent now kind of an Excel spreadsheet. And I very intentionally put dark and light and resolution and tension, and I knew I was tackling really, really tough stuff, and some of it way before my time. I mean, 10 years before it really came into mainstream. And so Fran Fran was very conscious of, I need something. In almost every one of my books, I have 3 plots going. And so I either would give her a case that was lighter, meaning give Fran something to do that was lighter, or she was going through something in her own life that was somewhat comical, because I knew I had to balance that no one was going to read it. I didn't think otherwise. And I have to tell you this funny comment is I went to GCLS in 2008, and then I went again last summer, and a woman came up to me that I had met in 2008, and she was talking about Commitment to Die, which was the 3rd book, and she's like, she was funny. She's like, that book still disturbs me. She's like, I love it, but it still disturbs me.
Oh, Lordy. Yes, yes.
I'm like, well, thanks. I mean.
That was awesome. Thank you for that compliment.
But no, to me, seriously, Liz, if someone is remembering this and haunted by it even 10 years later, I've done my job. And the writing, the other thing I've done to balance it is I feel like my writing style is fairly light, meaning a lot of dialogue, short sentences, short paragraphs. I keep it moving. Every chapter ends with a little teeny bit of a cliffhanger that you want to go, oh, let me read just one more before I go to sleep. Let me just read one more. Not tons of description, not tons of expository writing. So again, I mean, it's my style anyway, which you're seeing even translate into the Killed in Escrow series, which isn't nearly as deep, I guess, if you will, although it has some deep moments too, but I tried to balance it.
I can definitely relate to what you're talking about, like having, my first novel is a paranormal horror. I say horror because there's maybe 1 or 2 scenes that are very intense. But I have the tension going along, but every once in a while I break it with laughter. In between, when something really awful is about to happen, just before it happens, I have a really playful scene between 2 of the characters. Like they're just horsing around. And I feel like sometimes the reader needs kind of like a bit of a psychic break, between all the serious. Otherwise, their experience becomes heavier.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I literally did this on this spreadsheet type thing of I would look at it and go, okay, we haven't seen Fran in a while. I would move. I also did a lot with creating scenes on like note cards and then shuffling those note cards around, laying them out on the ground and then shuffling them around so that I had that.
No, that's, one of the things that I like to have as a part of many of my interviews with authors is, a little bit about the craft. And you've brought up a lot of great, what in teachers speak is called graphic organizers, where you kind of sort through information, whether they're in a spreadsheet or, in a list or whatnot. And I can see how that can be helpful. And now they have high-tech versions of that. But I find sometimes the more tactile is easier to navigate and really get the most out of it. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I could totally continue talking to you, and of course, I have, I've read 5 books, so that makes sense. That I can't cover it all in 30 minutes. Damn it!
Well, you've done a nice job. We've touched on a lot of stuff.
I've definitely enjoyed your company, and listeners out there, there is a book giveaway on the table for Killed in Escrow, and it's an ebook that will be given out to one winner. And in order to win, you need to leave a comment on the LizMcMullenShow.com, underneath her post, and I'll announce the winners in the next episode. But I just want to say thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure to finally meet you.
Thanks, Liz. I had a great time.